Welcome back, everyone. After a very short break, we're now going to continue right where Lee had left off, which was with creating some little spheres.
All right, as you can see, we've pretty much replicated what we were showing in Photoshop, which was our initial grid.
Okay.
Now, what we want to get to next is we want to start, not the hexagonal, we want to start moving towards this type of pattern.
Okay.
So to achieve that, what we need to do next is offset each alternating row to the left by 1/2 the spacing.
Okay.
So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to jump back into Visual Studio. And right now, we've got this two-dimensional kind of cascading 4, which is giving our spacing. Well, what we need to do is modify this a little bit to take into consideration odd and even rows. So to do that, we're going to put a conditional in here that's going to just basically take the modulus of z by 2. Did that even put a modulus in? Oh, there we go. So we're going to take the modulus of z by 2 and check to see if it equals 0. If it equals 0, we know we're on an even row. If it doesn't, it's an odd row.
Okay.
So on even rows, I want to continue and do what we expect it to do. On odd rows, I want it to do something else. Now, what I want it to do is very similar to what we're doing here, so I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it down here. But what I want to do is I want to modify what goes in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another var. This one I'm going to call x position, and we need to modify the x spacing based off of the even row. So what we're going to do is we're going to
Stop with the what are we going to do?
Alrighty. Sorry.
No, it's all good. You're just saying it 30 times a second.
So what we're not. Let's multiply x by spacing.
Okay.
And then to that, we're going to subtract half of spacing. Take x position, replace this with that. So now that is in there. Instead, if I build, come over here, everything is offset by half. Problem is, I want to have one more on each side.
Okay.
Because if you remember from the Photoshop, we said 5, 6, 5, 6, 5. But right now we still have 5s. So we'll stop that. Go back into Visual and take this.
Increment it by 1?
I can increment it by 1 or I can do less than equal, but I want to increment it by 1 for readability. Because sometimes it's really easy to miss that less than equals. Build it out, jump back, play, check. So now I have my 5, 6, 5, 6.
Okay.
Now, this is not a square. And one of the things that we said is our patch has to be square. So we have to force this to be square. So back in the Visual Studio, and a little bit more code, some more conditions. Say if position x is less than 0, and position x equals 0, and if position x is greater than size minus 1 times spacing. This is because we're using 0 numbers, or 0 base counting. And if we're greater than that,
then we'll just simply be equal to that, I would assume.
Yep.
Okay.
So now it's equal to position x. Oh, I typed in
Yeah, you
x
swapped
position.
it up.
Yeah, I do that from time to time, but I like this better. So that's what happens when you're looking at the keyboard and not the screen.
Finger pecking. Just messing with you, Lee. Just messing with you.
So as you can see, everything's crammed in on the left and everything's crammed onto the right.
Nice.
And we still have the alternating pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So what we've achieved is this.
Okay.
So that's pretty much
Yeah,
all I wanted to show for this one.
For those that are really kind of new to working with this, I mean, again, you got to picture little spheres on every place the lines cross there.
Right. So
and
this would be
the
a
outer
triangle.
lined edge. Yeah, exactly.
This would be a triangle, and this one would be a triangle.
Right. Just wanted to make sure they understood that for those that are new to working with this type of stuff, that on the outer edges on the graphic, those are also points as well, just like we're seeing here as spheres. All right, cool. So I guess this will be a short video. Is that?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, man, we almost could have made it.
Well, we could do some more if you want.
What do you want to do?
Well, let's play with it a little bit. So let's see if we can draw some lines.
Okay.
In here. So what we'll do is this will kind of come back to our numbering. Now we said that some of the stuff that we want to deal with is going to be coming up with the code that we need to generate these meshes.
Mm-hmm.
So and we need clockwise winding for everything to face the right direction. So let's see if we can't get some lines drawing to represent where our mesh would be. So our very first one, as you can see, is we have 0 here,
mm-hmm.
which is the very first one. But we have a very mathematical relationship. So the next one is 5, which happens to be our size. So we can go 0 plus 5 gives us our next vertex point. And then it's our index plus size plus 1 gives our next one.
Mm-hmm.
So we can use that relationship to determine what order we need to pick points to draw stuff.
Okay.
So if we go back in the code, and let's go down here and create a new method. We'll call this one void. Not create. We're going to draw. So draw grid. Not going to take anything in. Not going to return anything. And before I forget and wonder why things didn't work, I'm going to need to make this public. Go over to our train demo. Inside of update, we're going to draw
the demos.
Right, but I need to now save this. So we're going to need to make a train patch. I'll just call it patch. We'll assign it.
Mm-hmm.
And now I can call that instance draw grid on every update, because the functionality that I'm going to leverage is going to be the debugs draw line,
Okay.
which has to be drawn every update for it to work right. So now in here, what we can do is start to look at drawing those lines. Now the simplest way to do it is I know for a fact that we have vertices in order, and I know which ones they're going to be, so I can kind of hard code this just so we can get a visual representation. So I can do not debug.log but draw line. Now I need 2 locations. I need a start and a finish. Our very first one is going to be our vertices index 0, which we know is 0, and I need to draw to the next one. Now that one is going to be vertices. Now I said there was a relationship. I said that next one is our size.
Right.
So I can just put in size, and that'll give me the vertice I need. Now I can do debug dot draw line. This will be our second one. Our second line is going to go from vertices size
Over to size plus 1.
exactly. And to save time, I'm just going to copy this to size plus 1. And now I need to draw back down to our starting point. So I'm going to start with size plus 1, and then I'm going to draw it back down to our start. So if I go ahead and build this and jump back into Unity, stop this, cross my fingers and hope it works, go into debug, there's our first triangle.
Awesome.
So because this relationship is carried out throughout, what we can do next is put this inside of a loop.
Okay.
So we can go ahead and do our fors like we had before. Now I'm going to keep this simplified just so I can show you kind of where I'm going. I'm not going to go through all the different ones. We'll handle that next. So let's start with Z though. And this is going to be size. And then my second one, this will be X. Again, size. Oops, that did not take where I wanted it to. I want this to go here. So what I'm defining is basically index again. I'm going to start it off at 0. So inside of each loop, I want to increment the index. I'm going to take all of this, hit X, paste it here, but instead of starting with 0, I'm going to start off with our index. Then it becomes index plus size, index plus size again, index plus size plus 1, index plus size plus 1,
Index.
and back to 0. Or sorry, index, yeah.
Index.
That's what I meant. I was looking at the keyboard again. All right, so now this is going to loop through, and it's going to draw those lines. But this relationship, this 0 plus size plus 1, only pertains at certain points. Now, if I turn off our square grid, because those no longer apply, this is what we have as our actual grid. I want this triangle, then now index, as I go to the next one, go. Photoshop's being funky. All right, so now as I start off with 0, I go to index to 0, index plus size plus 1. I increment to the next one. Now I'm at index 1, index plus size plus index plus size plus 1, and I iterate through. This only works, or this particular relationship only works on our even rows. It does not work on our odd rows. So I have to take that into consideration here. So I have to make sure that this part will only run if the modulus of z, or the modulus of z by 2 equals 0. And then this should present an interesting little problem. So type bool, 2 equal signs, and go ahead and hit play, jump into debug. Notice the problem. We're getting some interesting artifacting.
Starts out pretty nice.
So what we have to deal with is remember that we don't want to go all the way to the end because it will cause some problems. It will also cause errors if we go too far above z. So I'm starting to get my triangles, but I'm still not getting all the way. It's getting to this end and causing an interesting problem. Now, I'm trying to remember exactly the equation I came up with. So I've got this, and I need to size less than this. And let me check some of my notes over here just to be safe. So I'm on the other monitor in case everybody's wondering, go, hey, we don't see nothing. So, and where did I put that? So I need to deal with let's see, so this is going to be, I don't need it here. I still need it here.
Yeah, you just looking over there briefly at your notes, you've got a special condition.
Well, this one is for the second set of triangles. So that one is for, because there, if you look at the rows, I've got this condition, this one, and this one, but that second set is for dealing with these alternating triangles. So that's the part that I'm trying to do. And then index, then I also have let's see else. Now I have to deal with,
well, I'm curious, right now you've already taken away the x minus 1 on the if it's
what's up?
Even. Oh, go ahead. I was just curious on what that cleaned up just by taking that -1 out of size on the x for loop.
Oh, that's to make sure that we iterate all the way to the end. I was trying to match it up because the problem is if we go too far, we get out of bounds or we wrap.
Sure.
To the
so
next
what right
index.
now? I'm just curious. What does it do right now if you run it just by taking that size -1? Since this is just like R&D.
Right. Let's see. Go ahead. Get my mouse back. So we get through to this point. The problem is I'm not taking into consideration what happens with odds. So my index, because what's happening is I'm still running through all this loop, but I'm not indexing once I get past the other parts. So what I have to deal with is, okay, if it's even, but I'm not incrementing the
That's
x.
true. I see what you're saying.
So I have to go here, put this in place. I still have to index at this point.
Yeah.
So that will handle indexing there. And then outside of that loop, I'm going to just put this in, because we'll have to come back and put more stuff in here. And we're also going to index again. This is to wrap us up. So if I go ahead and build this again and play it, now I get what I expect.
Gotcha.
Because what's happening is I have to index for each case, increment my index, and then when I'm here, I still have to increase my index.
Right. Yeah, it made sense
over.
once you said what you were doing.
And,
yeah.
And the z-1 is to ensure that I don't go past this and end up trying to look for positions up here.
Right.
And then the secondary index is to handle when I get to here. If I don't put that next index, it still leaves the index down here, which means I'll end up with a funky triangle going here. So I have to index one more time to bring us back up to the starting point on the next one.
Gotcha.
So this gets us just our top triangles. When we're looking at Photoshop, that gives us, how's an easy way to do this? Let's go here. I'm going to create another layer. And I'm going to change my color up to, say, a lighter blue. Grab my paint bucket, make sure I've got all layers checked. So what in essence we're doing is we're filling in these triangles right now.
Okay.
Visual aids, gotta love them.
Yeah, very nice. Very
so
nice.
that's our very first one. We've dealt with these triangles. Now what we want to do is I'm going to go ahead and stop it. is we want to take care of these other triangles that we're missing.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll come back to code, and that's where that special case was that you were talking about. So what we're going to do is we're going to check a special case, and it's you just say if x size minus 1. We're just going to make sure that we're not going off the end, and we're going to look at the relationship for this next set. So if we look at the relationship here, we start with index. Let me switch over to the V. So we start with index,
Mm-hmm.
and we still have to go clockwise. So our next one is going to be index plus size plus 1.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to go index plus 1,
Mm-hmm.
and then index. So to do that, we're going to do debug.drawLine. And we said we're going to start off with index. And then we're going to move on to index plus size plus 1. And we're going to use however I got that pasted. Alright, so now we're going to go to the next one, which we said is going to be index plus 1. And then finally back to index. So we're going to go from here, or sorry, we're going to go from here to here, and then the one after that's going to from here to here.
Okay.
So we need to start off at index plus size plus 1
Mm-hmm.
to index plus 1 draw a line, and then we're going to go from index plus 1 to index again. Now, if I were to run this as is, you're not going to notice much of a change. Except for the fact that we've got lines here. Well, we've got the lines down here.
Right.
And you may think, well, we drew these and then we're coming back and drawing these. But it's happening in the same loop operation.
Exactly.
So we're actually building what is known as a triangle strip.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not actually going, the order isn't this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, then this one, this one, this one, this one. It's actually doing this crisscross thing.
Mm-hmm.
All the way forward. So we're getting little triangle strips, and it's maintaining it for each and every even row. So now what we've got is all of these filled in.
Nice.
Now we need to come back for this next set. Now, to do this, we're going to need to start fleshing out this part of the code right down here.
Right.
So once again, we're going to have, just like before, we're going to have two conditions. We're going to have something like this. We're going to have a special condition, and then we're going to handle this relationship. So let's figure out what those relationships are. So in this one, it's going to be index, and then it's going to be index plus size plus 1, and then index plus 1 again.
Okay.
So we've got something similar to that, just like this one. So we go 0 plus size plus 1 and then plus 1. So we've already written that condition. So instead of writing it all again, we've got this one. So I'm going to take this, paste it here, build it, come back, cross my fingers, and now we've got that other set.
Mm-hmm.
So now we've done, whoops.
I was about to say.
Get a little carried away. Whoops. That was good. 2 pixel line, and I managed to click on it. So now we have that.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and stop this. Now we have to handle that last condition. That last condition still is going to rely on this conditional, which is basically to keep it from running off the end. But if we look at the relationship again, we're going with index, index plus size plus 1. Again, we've seen that pattern before. That's this one. So we can take this pattern, put it down here in the special condition, build it out, make sure we don't have any errors, and we can go ahead and hit play. Look at it, and we've run into a problem.
Almost
Got it, but we're still off by 1. So what is causing our problems here? So we need to look at all the code, check my notes, and see what one I've missed. Index plus 1. Welcome to the world of R&D. Alright, I'm going to do this for now. And this for now. Just so I can kind of get a visual idea of what has broken. Ah, yes. I did get that relationship wrong. Alrighty. Let me go back to Photoshop. That's size plus 2. Because this is index. Go back here. So we start off, what I did is I did size plus 1. If we look, this is 6 plus size plus 2. So I need to go...
Wait a minute. 6?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. Index plus 1. Oh, because I'm doing the calculation based on this index. So I'm not taking this index because my index on my even rows start at 5.
Mm-hmm.
So, my bad. This is what happens when we code. Okay, my index at 0 is 5. So my next one is index plus 1, index plus size plus 1, index plus size plus 2.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then at each index, because I'm starting with this index, not this one.
That's right. Okay.
Nah. So, just to be sure, so index plus 1, index plus size plus 1, index plus size plus 1, index plus size plus 2, index plus size plus 2, and index plus size plus 1. And that's the only one I've got commented out or running, so now I'm... So, same thing as before, which probably means I didn't get the update. Photoshop. Wow, I can't type. Alright, let's see if I can get... come on, hello. Anytime now. So it's not recaching. Every once in a while, visuals...
Just throw a debug line right there.
Yeah, every once in a while Unity won't recompile the scripts. Then you gotta wonder why. There we go. So now we get what we expect. Which means I can uncomment all this. And all of this. I can kill this. Build. And see if everything comes back. Alright, now we have a mesh. If you look, this mesh, hold on, this is a grid with debug lines. Right. This is not a mesh.
That's correct.
So, but the cool thing is, you've got all the spheres, we've got all the lines, and it's drawing out, and it looks like this.
Well, now you just need to fill in the rest of those.
Yeah, because we've done this one, this one, this one.
But the nice thing is you're really demonstrating to everybody how when you were R&Ding this the other day, you went through getting all of the math worked out before you started creating vertices and triangles and all.
Oh yeah, if I tried to go straight from a mesh before doing this, you'd have polygons all over the place and I'm trying to figure out what happens. And what got really weird is some of those math before I got it worked out. You saw how it was drawing from, say, this point up to here. Those, you could see the lines, but when I was first coming up with it and turning it into meshes, those faces were reversed. So I couldn't see them until they were there. Everything else was complete. It looked great until I put a texture on it. And I go, why are there shadowing there? And I flipped over, and I had a couple of stray triangles down here. Oh, yeah. See, the reason what's going on is because we're using one vertex for each one of these points, and we're not splitting these up, so all of these triangle strips are continuous. It, in effect, is smooth shaded across. The shaders make it all smooth. So if you end up having something off to the side and wrapping, it's trying to smooth shade across that face, which gives you some really wonky looking results. But I also want to point out with just this, the code that we've got now, if we jump back over into our code train demo, we've hard coded some numbers up here. And we're going to experiment with these a little bit. So I want to get rid of the magic numbers. So let's go ahead and put a couple of constants in. So I'm going to put a constant integer, and this will be patch size. And I'm going to set this, because we've already seen what it looks like at 5, I'm going to jump it up to 10.
Okay.
And then I'm going to do a private constant float. And this will be patch spacing. And I'm going to set this to 0.5. So we're actually going to shrink it. And then I'm going to take this and then this one, replace these, build it. Now what we should see is a denser mesh, but smaller.
Oh, we got an error.
Oh, that was because I had built out while it was still running.
Oh, okay. Hey,
so same size, but much more dense because I've got twice as many points.
Very
and
cool.
it all scales. Everything goes along with it. Now, there's another thing that I want to handle here before we get into the mesh part. And to do that, I'm going to go back to the settings that we had before, which is 5 and 1. So if I go back and I run this, we have 5 vertices per section. But people don't normally think this way. When they say, you know, I want a grid that is 5 by 5, that is 1 meter apart, they expect 5 of these sections, not 5 vertices. So what I want to do is adjust the code so that when you type in 5, you get 5 polygons across. Because what ends up happening is to do 5 polygons, you actually need 6 vertices across. So I want to handle that now before we get into the meshes.
Okay, yeah, because looking at it, you've got 5 polys going across that way, and then looking at it in depth, we've also got 1, 2, 3,
Well,
4.
I've got
Yeah,
four.
I meant, yeah, you got 4 going across in width, and then also in depth you have 4 as well.
Right, and where I specified a size of 5, I expect a 25 square meter patch, and all I've got is a 16 square meter patch.
Okay.
So that's a bit of a discrepancy. Most people don't think in vertices; they think in meters or square meters. So what we're going to do is we're going to adjust it simply by going into the terrain patch. I still want people to type in the size that they expect, so I don't want them to have to manually think about increasing stuff. So inside of the constructor, I'm going to take size and I'm going to increment this by 1.
Okay.
So now when we go back and we play, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now I have 25 square meters of surface area, and I have 6 vertices.
Okay.
On here, and I have 8 up here. So all that's calculated. All you need to do is type
You
in.
have 8 up there? 2 more then?
Or is it 1 more? Yeah, 1 more. Sorry,
Yeah, okay.
You're right. So this will be 6, 7, 6, 7.
Right.
And it's all in a hexagon. So you don't have to think about it. You go, okay, I need to cover this many meters in X and Y. Type that number in, and I want my grid spacing to be X number.
Okay.
You enter those in. You don't have to think about anything else.
Gotcha.
So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover in this video. The next one will delve into the world of creating meshes.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Well, that wraps it up. Thanks, guys.